Hello, I'm Dr. Cathy Rowe, Executive Director of New Jersey Advocates for Aging Well. And today we're going to talk about safer cannabis use in older adults. I'd like to welcome Dr. David Adinaro, a lifelong New Jersey resident and former Deputy Commissioner of Public Health in the New Jersey Department of Health. Dr. Adinaro, welcome today.
Hi, thanks for having me. Thanks.
So this is an important topic and very relevant these days. And New Jersey's cannabis market has expanded from only medicinal cannabis for several years to expanding into adult use cannabis and the proliferation of dispensaries across the state. Can you tell us a little bit about these changes and what it means for the consumer?
Sure. I think first and foremost, it means that people will have access to highly regulated, highly tested cannabis products that meet the state standards, and that, in essence, what you're getting, that what you're buying is what they say it is, and you're obtaining it from a source that has been approved by not only your local authorities, but also by the state of New Jersey.
Okay. And when we're talking about older adults, they have a higher chance of using prescription medications. So what do people need to ask their doctor about cannabis use and the interactions it might have with other medications that they're taking?
Sure. And, I think everybody's been to the doctor's office and had as part of the normal screening, their physician asked them if they are using alcohol on a regular basis, or do they smoke tobacco, et cetera. While we're in this mode where I think we're catching up with physicians getting used to asking, particularly older Americans, whether or not they're using cannabis products, I think it's important that people who are using cannabis products and see their doctors to let their physician know that, so that they can take this into account when they're discussing their medications, when they're discussing any issues they're having. And certainly anytime that they have any concerns, they can ask their physician or the pharmacist about any potential interactions and things they should watch out for.
Okay. And so what are the things that people need to know if they have never or in a long time used cannabis? Like, can you give us a cannabis 101? Because this is not the same content or substance that people might have experienced earlier in their lives.
Sure. So I think first and foremost, people should read up on the subject. They should access materials that are from trusted sources. The internet obviously has a lot of information out there, but they should, go to sources that they've found to be good for particularly medically related information. I think the other thing to understand is that cannabis tends to be THC, which is one of the major components that causes the effects that when you ingest cannabis, has increased greatly over the last 30 years, particularly in legal products. So you may find that if you had used cannabis in your 20s and you're now in your 70s, that it is much more powerful. Also, the ways that people will ingest or take the cannabis has changed. Things like edibles are more common nowadays. As people move away from, smoking things or lighting things up. And they should understand that that ingestion may also, come with a more delayed onset of the effects of cannabis, the cannabis product. And, a certain amount of patience may also be required. And again, I think this is where having a, legal and approved retailers is important. I think you can get information from them also about the relative strengths of their products and the timing of the onset, and also, information for beginners that can be very useful to them. Okay.
So you said the strengths differ. So how do the strengths or potency differ among the options to consume?
Well, I mean, some of the federal studies have shown that in, 30 years ago, when the federal government was testing, at that point, street purchased cannabis products, so marijuana, et cetera, that they could have THC concentrations that would be anywhere from 3 to 7%. There are products now that have, 15+% THC. So these are, much more, quote, powerful products. And again, a lot of this depends on not just how strong it is, but how much you ingest. I mean, think of the difference between drinking a beer versus having 4 or 5 shots of vodka.
Okay.
One shot of vodka may be close to the alcohol content of one beer, but it's in a more concentrated form. So I think you have to understand the type of product you're going to be ingesting, and the circumstances around it. Have you eaten? Your particular, your age, your particular tolerances, as you're considering it.
Okay. So, now the state licensed dispensaries are relatively new. So can you tell people about how to find one and what to expect when they go to one?
Well, first of all, I think this is where the Cannabis Regulatory Commission really comes into play. They're the leader in the state for both helping disseminate some of that information. So it's available on their website, so the state's website, so people can go to nj.gov /cannabis, and they can find approved sellers there. And then I think it's a retail experience. So I think people have to walk in, and, the places, much like all retail places, those places that have more customer service and are friendlier are probably the places that people are going to be more comfortable with. And I think this is an opportunity for people to do some, either talking to their friends and neighbors about where they go if they happen to be participating in this, and word of mouth to a large extent. But I always think that the New Jersey website for the Cannabis Regulatory Commission really should be the first stop for most people. Okay.
And there are different methods of to consume cannabis now, like flower or smoking or edibles. How do they differ, and what do people need to know when they're making decisions about, if and when they want to try what these different options are?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, something where for people who may have used cannabis earlier in their life, this will be the biggest change that they will see. Vaping was not something that was readily available to most people throughout their life, and this is something that is more commonly used, particularly by tobacco users, and particularly younger people. So I think for folks who may not be familiar with it, this may be something new to them. And also now the ability for edibles, so to consume something by mouth. I think people will use a colloquial term, a gummy, but I think it's very important. I prefer using the term edible. I think it's important to understand this is not a candy. It may look candy-like. And so I think some of the things that come along with this, particularly for older folks who may have grandchildren or young children, are, the safety that comes around this. These are things that need to be stored in the same way you would be storing alcohol, or the same way you'd be storing controlled substances if, let's say, you were somebody who was on an opioid or a benzodiazepine. These are things that you should be putting up away from availability of people who might get into your medicine cabinet and not be left lying out.
Right. And one of the things that we see a lot more of now, too, is CBD products. There are a lot of products like CBD oil or gummies that they help with sleep or anxiety. Can you tell us about the difference between CBD and THC and how they differ, in terms of cannabis? What's the same? What's different? What do people need to know about this?
Sure. So the black and white parts of this are fairly simple. Cannabis products, THC comes from cannabis products come from the cannabis plant. CBD products come from hemp. Now, and both are legal in the state of New Jersey. CBD is legal on the federal level. I think it's important also to remember that cannabis is not currently legal from
On
on
the
the federal
federal
level.
Okay.
And that as far as the FDA is concerned, or the DEA is concerned, more specifically, it is a Schedule 1 medication, so it's actually more tightly controlled than opioids. It is not something that the federal government allows providers, to prescribe. So I think that's, keep in mind, and CBD is considered legal from that point of view. They share some common characteristics. I think you will see CBD oftentimes as more of a topical product, where you don't see cannabis as much as a topical product. I think the oil part of it tends to lend itself well to that. But there's also a little bit of a gray area. There are products that are sold under the heading of CBD that can contain THC or variations of THC that are not necessarily legal products. They're in a gray area. And so I think you even when you're purchasing CBD products, you should be purchasing them from a reliable source. And you should be able to understand what's in it and have clear labeling. And again, because of the variety of effects that these things can have, if you are using CBD, you should, again, start slow, understand the effect it'll have on your body. And if you are going to be then adding cannabis to that, understand that there may be some interactions between the CBD product and the cannabis, and, understand those interactions, as you're going into it.
Okay. So it sounds like the main takeaways are that if someone were to try this, 1, they should do the research. 2, they should start slow. And 3, talk to their doctor about it, or their healthcare provider, so that they understand how this would affect their health, how it interacts with any other medications or conditions they have. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to this?
I think the other part, I think it's important to understand 2 things that are a little bit different about cannabis. I think the first one is we have a lot of research about the interaction of, let's say, alcohol with a number of different medications. We don't have as much information about the interaction of cannabis with a lot of prescription medications, because it's relatively newer that it's available as a legal product. So I think you should always be cautious when starting to use cannabis or any product along with your medications. The other one that I think is important to keep in mind is that cannabis is a psychoactive product, right? It can alter mood. And like all mood altering medications, it has a potential for abuse. It has a potential for for side effects. It has a potential for dependency. So people who have had a history of dependency may want to be cautious in their use of this if they've been abstinent for a long time with whatever they had a dependency on. And again, talk to their physician and think about it clearly before they begin to use it.
So, Doctor, I want to thank you for your sharing your information today. And is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we go?
Sure. Well, first of all, Cathy, thank you for having me. This was a great opportunity to discuss a very important subject. And again, I think the emphasis should be that this is a new world, both in terms of what is available and the fact that it is legal, and we have retailers that are now selling products. And I think people just need to do their due diligence and read up on this. And there's some great resources available through the CRC as they move forward into this world.
Okay. And if people want more information, we're going to share the website here for the Cannabis Safe New Jersey. Here you can find information, resources, and learn a little bit more. So I want to thank Dr. Adinaro for joining us today and for sharing this very important information. And we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.